Fable 2 gave us what should have been one of the greatest villains ever. A grieving father who believes the only way to save Albion is to destroy it. But instead, we got a villain so underused, he barely makes sense. Lucien doesn't start off as a bad guy, and that's what makes him fascinating. At first, he's just a man trying to do whatever he can to bring back his dead wife and child. But like the saying goes, good intentions pave the road to hell. When he kills Rose and shoots the hero of Barristone, he isn't cold or indifferent. He's clearly torn apart by it. You can see it in his face and in the way he talks to you. This isn't cruelty, it's desperation. Lucien doesn't kill because he wants to be evil. He does it because he convinces himself that there is no other choice. And that's what makes the moment hit so hard. And his motivation behind this forces an uncomfortable question. What would you be willing to do to bring back someone you love from the dead? That's a powerful foundation for a villain, not because Lucien is monstrous, but because he feels painful human. Here's where Fable 2 starts to stumble. Lucien's descent into madness is one of the most important parts of his story, and we barely witness it. Instead of watching him break, spiral, and lose himself, he vanishes from the narrative and locks himself away to build a spire. What's compelling about Lucien is that he truly believes he's the good guy, but not in a theatrical, mustache-twirling way. His morality is simply skewed. Over time, his goal shifts. It stops being about bringing back his family and turns into something darker, destroying Albion to wipe away its corruption and rebuild the world under his rule. At that point, he stops being a tragic figure and starts becoming a tyrant. But again, we don't really see that transformation, it just happens between scenes. This is where Lucien becomes genuinely brilliant, because in a strange way, Lucien isn't just your enemy, he's a reflection of you as the player. Like the hero of Barristone, Lucien believes that his vision is the right one. He looks at a broken world and decides what he thinks is best and acts on it. Consequences be damned. And that's not that different from how you play Fable 2. Throughout the game, you decide who lives, who dies, who prospers, and who suffers. You shape towns, save or punish people, and leave your moral imprint across Albion. In that sense, both you and Lucien act as judge, jury, and executioner over the world. The difference isn't compassion, it's scale. You reshape Albion through countless small choices. Lucien tries to remake it in a single wish. That's what makes him so compelling. He isn't just a villain. He's what your character could have become if circumstances were different. Your hero also moves through Albion believing their choices matter, that their judgment is right, that their vision of the world should shape other people's lives. The difference isn't that you're better than Lucien, it's that you were never pushed to the same breaking point as he was. Lucien is what happens when grief, power, and desperation collide with someone who already believes their worldview is the one that matters the most. He's not a cartoon bad guy, he's a broken man who convinces himself that the only way to save the world is to destroy it and rebuild it from scratch. On paper, that should have made Lucien legendary. But Fable 2 never commits to Lucien the way it needed to. The game constantly tells us he's a massive threat, but rarely makes us feel it. The shift from him shooting you as a child to him killing your dog and possibly murdering your spouse and child all happens mostly off screen. The next time we see him outside of the opening, he's already older, colder, and clearly villainous, but we never experienced how he got there. Instead of watching his fall into madness, we get roughly 4 cutscenes with him in the entire game. When your main antagonist only appears for maybe 15 minutes in total, it's almost impossible to build a personal connection to him. Most of the conflict ends up being with his soldiers and not with Lucien himself. So Fable 2 tells us that Lucien is terrifying, but as a player, he rarely feels that way. That said, Lucien does pull one of the most brutal villain moves I've ever seen in a game. If you have a spouse and child before your second last confrontation with him, he doesn't just taunt you, he gloats that he killed your family, and he actually did. That moment is cruel, shocking, and effective. For a brief second, Lucien finally feels like the monster the game promised. But then, the final boss fight undercuts everything. You press a single button, and Lucien is dead. If you hesitate, Reaver kills him for you. So the climactic confrontation with the big bad of Fable 2 lasts only seconds. There's no duel, no ideological clash, no moral dilemma, just a gunshot. For a villain that tries to be this complex, that payoff feels almost insulting. Fable 2 also leaves far too much about Lucien unexplained. What exactly was the ritual he was performing at the end? Was it meant to make him a hero? If so, why wouldn't he just wish for that with the spire? What did the music box actually do? You open it and Lucien weakens, but the game never truly explains why. And the prophecy at the first of the game also has some problems. Lucien says either Rose or the hero would stop him, but how did he know it was specifically you? Because technically, if you wait too long, Reaver shoots him, not you. That undercuts the entire chosen hero idea. Despite all this, I still think Lucien is fascinating. He's the perfect example of absolute power corrupts absolutely. We see a man start with a noble goal to bring his family back from death, and he ends up willing to erase an entire world just to fix it. Instead of saying, I wish Albion wasn't corrupt, he chooses utter destruction so he can rebuild the world in his own image. But here's the problem. The game never really shows us that corruption. We don't see Albion collapsing. We don't see evil winning. We don't see a society rotting from the inside out. Instead, Fable 2 is mostly about love, heartbreak, redemption, and bringing criminals to justice, which makes Lucien's motivations feel disconnected from the world we actually experience. A simple fix would have been this: have Lucien's wife and daughter be killed by bandits or criminals instead of illness. Instantly, his hatred for Albion would have made perfect sense. If Fable 2 was a character, it would be Lucien. They both were a brilliant idea, but had terrible execution. On the surface, Lucien is an amazing villain, but when you look deeper, too much of her story doesn't quite add up. There's nothing wrong with a villain being evil for evil's sake, but when a game tries to make a villain complex without properly justifying their worldview, the character starts to fall apart. When I began writing this video, I thought I was going to defend Lucien as an underrated villain, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized the truth. Lucien isn't bad because the idea is bad. He's bad because Fable 2 never fully committed to him. And that tension between brilliant concept and poor execution is exactly what makes both Lucien and Fable 2 so fascinating. If you like deep dives into characters like Lucien and why some games succeed while others fail, that's what I do here. So why not consider subscribing, and while you're at it, why not watch the video on screen now?